Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Welcome on Twitch. Welcome on YouTube, guys. I'm really excited today because I get to talk to a friend, someone who's hung out and watched videos here on the channel for a long time, run trials with us in the guild, and as many of the folks who come through That Was in the Boss do, very much outgrown what we do as a guild, although that has progressed through time. Really excited to talk about it. Forgive me if I'm sweaty, guys. I'm just a sweaty gamer, and I can't help myself. It's not because I just came back from the gym. But with that, let me introduce Luna. Luna, say hello and tell me how to say your
Hello,
last
guys.
name.
My last name is Luna Cairu.
Cairu.
You can say Cairu. Some people say Cairu. Other people say Cairu, like with something in the U.
Okay.
But it's
Cairu.
Luna Cairu. You
Cairu.
can say like that.
Okay, that's beautiful. That's awesome. Awesome. Well,
Yeah, yeah. The American accent is enough. Like Cairu. It's okay. It's okay. It's totally fine.
need a little roll there, I think, that we don't typically have. Funny story. So Luna is Portuguese. Portuguese is, I believe, her native language. Is that correct, Luna?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm stretching all my English as possible here.
Oh no,
You
you're
will see.
you're doing great. You're doing great. I was just gonna say that, just like a fun anecdote. My wife and I, we got a chance to go, and this is obviously not Portuguese and not not your part of the world, but close to it. We went to Ecuador, and it was really funny because my wife is way smarter than I am, so she has a much wider vocabulary. And we were talking with some folks whose Spanish was their second language, and periodically some of the locals, the natives that were speaking Quechua, their original language, and they would they would turn to me and ask me in Spanish, "What did she say?" And I would have to turn to my wife and say, "What did he say?" And then she'd be like, "He's asking you what I said," and I'm like, "Oh, what'd you say?" She would tell me, and I would repeat it back. The whole thing was hilarious, and it was just because I could
Oh
apparently
my god.
imitate the accent a little bit better than she could. Uh, I thought it was hilarious. So this funny game of telephone going on. All right, anecdotes out of the way. I wanted to talk a bit. Hey, Mother Clucker. Hey, Nani. It's good to see you. Robert says every time you do these tanking discussions, you make me want to try again. Oh man, Robert, I'm glad it makes you want to try again. Guppysaurus, what's going on? Guppysaurus is Mother Clucker. I'm sorry. So let me correct. So today what we want to talk about is, broadly tanking misconceptions. I think that's the idea here. But I think we want to start off by talking about kind of some of our personal experiences. Maybe Luna, you could start off for us. Like tell us about like what got you into tanking, what got you into ESO maybe, because I know it wasn't that long ago, and just a little bit about your gaming history, if you will.
Yeah, not that long ago. And I think like putting some personal experience here is also a good thing for us, like to bring to the table. Because oftentimes we're talking about numbers, but it's cool to have like a space to talk about how we experienced it, how we started it. Basically, I came from another game, like also an MMORPGs, but totally different. The name is Ragnarok Online. It's a Korean game that has like multiple servers across the world. And I was a raid leader, basically a guild leader there.
Okay.
And I had like my Brazilian guild, my Brazilian friends, and so. But the game's like it didn't age really well, and I felt like I wanted to play like a modern MMORPG where I could have like the Trinity system fully contemplated with content, with something that I could like practice, learn, and engage. And I was looking for something. And yeah, so got me interested. I had already like researched a bit about the game, and it felt interesting because I feel like the world was cool and the combat dynamic, which was not like tap target, but at the same time it was something in between, was a little interesting to me. And what got me about this game was like the more I researched about it, the more complex the game felt. I had like a bunch of stuff that I could read about the game even before playing the game. I saw that like you can do like set combinations, there are guilds, there are classes, you can do like any role in any class. I think that's really cool. So all this like customizability, I don't know how to say this word, all these things like you're able to customize on your character was something that like got me into the game. So I was like, after 2 weeks of researching, of watching videos, I finally purchased the game and started playing it.
Okay.
It's also like a big deal for me because like it's kind of expensive to start playing the game because
Sure.
especially here because like because of our coin is so like inferior, like in value to dollar. So paying for ISO Plus is like a big deal. So it was a big decision
Yeah,
for me
yeah.
when I was starting.
Yeah,
But
that's
it was cool. It was cool.
that's really cool. It's interesting. So the Trinity system, so tanking, healing, DPS, and then you're clearly someone like myself, and I think probably not everyone, but probably more than the average gamer. People who watch this channel probably really like to get into the analytical side of like how to play games and kind of. I like really complicated games. I enjoy. I don't like them to being
Yeah.
complicated for no reason, but I do enjoy really complicated games typically. Uh,
Yeah, not like they need to be complicated, but they
right.
can be complicated when you want to study it and go like in the little bits of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and good game design, I've talked about this a decent amount, but like good game design is like where the rules are simple to understand so you can pick it up quickly. But then it's like, oh, but if you go deeper and deeper, you can kind of min max, you can learn the strategies unfold and the way the combination of these relatively simple things can be put together, so to speak.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and I think,
That's basically it.
if I have like one of my few complaints about the way the combat system and everything is like, there are like a couple like major complaints are like the noise. I do feel like there's a little too much noise sometimes in some of the quote unquote options that are unfortunately not really great options, but are still there, and it can be a little bit confusing. I wish the game gave you a little bit more guidance in that way, but
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Cake Man here says low skill floor, high skill ceiling, and Robert Miller said, "Yeah, that exactly. Yep, yep." Mother Clucker, this is just a cheap water bottle I got off of Amazon. If I'm being honest. What up, Jeremy? All right, cool. Well, my experience. Oh man, so I back in the day, I used to play WoW, and then I got into just raid leading pugs, and a lot of the guilds were that I experienced were kind of toxic, and I was like, well, I don't want to do that. So I would do pug trials, fairly difficult ones, and I would raid lead. And then I think some people found me and they're like, hey, you want to come, lead raids in our guild? Because finding a good raid lead is like grab onto them and and so
Yeah,
I did that for a little bit, and then ESO. When I first started playing, I was on a laptop that didn't even meet the minimum system requirements. Couldn't go into a 12-man content because the computer just wouldn't work, and the lag and everything else. I couldn't do some of the dungeons, and yeah, I don't know. And then I quit for a bit after having an issue with color blindness in ESO and it not being accessible. It really I kind of lost it. And then that was in Maelstrom Arena. But yeah, to tanking specifically, I don't know. I think I came back and started playing some, and then eventually it was kind of the same deal where I knew there was good guilds out there. I was just having problems finding them. The guild finder in game has been not amazing for a long time, and so
yeah,
I found some good people to run with it a couple different times, but I didn't find like a good guild, and so I just decided, you know what, I'll just make one. And I was raid leading things that I didn't know what I was doing, and also found out that we always needed a tank. Tanks were hard to find, and so I decided to be the tank. I think I learned that being a necro tank, you could absolutely be like a hero and help get people through content, and people would have a lot more fun. And I think that for me was probably and still is one of the biggest drivers of wanting to tank is like I can help get the group through content. If you're on a DPS and the things go wrong, you can do stuff to help, but only within certain bounds. If you're on a
yeah,
healer, you can do a little bit more, but still within only certain bounds. But if you're on a tank and you can stay alive, you can carry teams through content. Luna
yeah. That's true. That's true.
Guppy Source is asking, what is your favorite class?
Oh, my favorite class. That's a interesting question because I think it changed. It changes a lot. Like you were talking about how you started tanking.
Yeah.
So let me talk a little bit how I started tanking, and it will lead to my favorite class.
Okay.
When I started playing ESO, um, I was like choosing my role, and I was like, oh, I want to tank. I like to play tank. I'm also like a selfless person that likes to like turn like content able for people to do like be that person playing to help others is something that I really liked about it.
Hold on one second, Luna.
So
Hold on,
I
let me interrupt. One
okay
second.
okay
1 second. We should have done an audio test. Keep talking now. All right.
Okay, okay,
I'm just turning your volume up here.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Hope I sound better
Yeah,
now.
there we go. All
So
right.
I always enjoyed like playing for others, like playing for with a support class. So was not into too much on playing DD. DD for me was more like a way to engage with the world. But at the same time, I faced like the fear of playing tank because I don't know anything about this game. So what should I do? I'm not the person to be guiding people, to be like running ahead and trying to help people. I'm not that good yet. And I felt like I couldn't start the game tanking, which was a misconception for myself. And I started playing as a healer. And
Okay.
my first character was a warden healer. But then when I finally felt that I knew enough about the game and I was feeling a little more confident, and I was like, okay, now I want to tank. First, I saw your video, like your ultimate guide for tanking. That was super helpful and insightful for me to start, and also like gave me the drive to not feel that much pressured about playing tank.
Okay.
And the thing that I most like about characters, about tank, is like a mage tank. I always loved that idea of playing like with double staffs and be a tanker and have a lot of spells of magic spells. Not the traditional like tank with sword and shield and super bulky. I was more like a mage that can control the battlefield.
Yeah, cast
So I
shields.
was reading about Arcanist, and Arcanist was super interesting. But it was like, oh, I have to buy it. It's the last episode. I don't have it. I only have the base game. We were in Necron update, and I only really started it when we got to the next update, this last one with Gold Road, because then Arcanist could be viable through the store, and that's when I started tanking. And Arcanist was really important to me because the class itself is like so powerful. It has everything. Like it's a super packed kit with everything that you need. And it was really interesting for me to start. And was the first one that I thought that I could be doing like a mage vibe of tanking with double ice staff. Because I was already doing some maths, even though I never even touched on tanking. But I was under a lot of misconceptions at the time. So I felt like the only tank that I could double ice staff was Arcanist. Because you had like Minor Breach from the defensive skill that gives the major resolve. It gives minor breach to the enemies when they attack you. And oh, icy staff don't have a way to minor breach was a misconception that I had at the time.
Sure, sure.
So I was like, oh, so with Arcanist, this won't be a problem. So maybe that's the direction that I should go. And it also had that skill that packs the mobs all together, that pulls them
Mm-hmm.
to a single one.
Yeah, super
And then
helpful.
I didn't need a shield to pull enemies. So I was like, oh, if I can play more staff, I'm playing this. But like it was my start one, but the class that really put me into making real content, like trial contents and hard content, were sorcerer. So I think this was like my personal favorite for a long time, probably still is. I feel like streaking is super cool. It
Oh
still
yeah.
has like that mage concept.
Uh-huh.
This magical tank is
Sure.
pretty similar in this aspect, so it's pretty fun. And at that time, when I was starting to play, um, like the first builds, like from Sork without pets, it was getting popular finally. Because I was researching, and every sorcerer guide was with pets. Like you need a pet to tank,
Okay.
and I hate pets. Sorry to say about that. If you like pets, sorry, but I hated like pets. I don't like those address stuff. I just like sorcerer,
Yeah.
like the lightning style, all those stuff, super cool. So when I felt like I could do it, I did a sorcerer and was probably the most fun that I had at the time. Nowadays, I feel like I tank with everything. I have a bunch of fun tanking with Warden. I do a lot of Dragon Knight, mostly Dragon Knight because of the sweaty content, and Dragon Knight gives me the stagger fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I hated Dragon Knight. Like it's the only class that I always say to myself, I will never play this. I don't like Dragon Knight. I don't like people forcing me to play Dragon Knight. I won't play Dragon Knight. If people want Sorks, okay, I can play Sorks. But DK, I will never. And here I am playing Dragon Knight, doing sweaty content, and doing Stagger, and that's it.
Yeah, it's funny because when the last video, the comparative analysis video, when I was talking about stagger, and I was saying that like I feel like this skill should just go away, and I was like, some people are gonna not like that I'm saying this, and I was thinking of, of you as being one of the people that were like, don't take away my stagger, and then sure enough, you messaged me or maybe dropped a comment that was exactly that. um,
Yeah, I hated Dragon Knight until I started doing Stagger because it was difficult. I had to learn some more stuff about the game that I didn't knew yet. I
Yeah,
had to learn some more specific movements about the bosses that I didn't knew yet until playing Dragon Knight, because you have to drop block. It's
for
like
sure.
a necessity. So it was really important to me. Even though I'm not a big fan, I feel like it's fun to do and to play with the class.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's really, it's so funny. I talked to so many different people. I mean, it came up last maybe a Saturday night. We were doing the one tank, one healer, 10 DPS, VSS hard mode, um, and we ended up with like a couple of pugs, guys. If you haven't seen that stream for over the weekend, it's hilarious. Maybe skip to the Loke pools if you just want to be part of it. Absolutely hilarious. But one of the people there, Rin actually pointed out that like she's like talking about her warden and how she likes to play on her warden, and et cetera, et cetera. And we still find it in game, as you find so many people that are like, I just want to play this class, and there's it's just because it's fun, and it's really important not to like lose that part of the game. Okay, even if
Yeah,
you're someone like Luna and I, where you like the numbers and you like doing the optimal thing, don't forget it is about having fun. I was turning my UI off over the weekend. Why? I don't. It's not optimal, but it's fun. It was cool to play the game with and it actually looked pretty, and there was not like words popping up on my screen and what have you. Here we got a couple of comments here. Let me just read through these real quick. That one ability makes me want to tank, and also in reference to the arc pool, Cake Man says that one ability makes you want to tank. Robert also says I love the arc pool, and then yeah, a couple of Robert also says yeah, DK is meta. I hate it, but I think everybody kind of feels like DK. There's a couple of comments towards this that like you know. Um, DK's not going anywhere as far as being the quote unquote like most meta class. Zoss, Robert Miller says, yeah, this is absolutely, I'm on this page. Zoss, add stagger to scribing, please. Yeah, that would be excellent. Daedric, sweaty in-gamer kind of strikes again. What's up? What's up, Daedric? All right, Nani's dipping out. Yeah, so I mean, I guess anything to say in response to that, and then we got a question about race that we can maybe hop into.
okay, that's a good question. Just to point out, I'm talking about Dragon Knight, and I like it not for the like not the same. The Dragon Knight's a really good class for beginners. This is not the part of the class that I like. There was always the part of the class that I didn't enjoy, because a lot of people like said, oh, it's much easier to tank, it's much easier, it's like super packed kit, you can regain stamina while blocking.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just to finish about Dragon Knight,
Sure, sure.
yes, that's true, but it's also maybe the hardest class to tank, and I only realized what I liked about Dragon Knight after that. So it's not a beginner friendly in this regard, but yeah, yeah.
And you're referring specifically to stagger.
Yeah, yeah, basically the stagger.
Okay.
Because like it's just one thing, but it makes like the gameplay infinitely harder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Trying to actually keep that up. Absolutely. Yeah, it's really funny that, and it's really interesting that you're saying that you don't feel like it is the easiest class, which is what everybody has said for so long. You don't feel that way.
Yeah, it is not. It is not, because if you play this class on the highest level as possible, it's probably the hardest or one of the hardest. But honestly, on my personal experience, if you play DK doing stagger, it's definitely the hardest tank, and it's
Yeah.
also the easier if you not do it. Like
Right.
not
Right.
necessarily the easiest one, but one of the easiest ones.
Okay.
So it's a pretty interesting balance.
Yeah. So stagger is kind of that knob that turns it from easy to very difficult. Is kind of
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
saying. Melina says hello. Also.
Hello, hello, Brazilian friend.
Cool. Well, oh man, I don't know. Oh yeah, Mother Clucker is asking about race. Now, I'm sorry, Guppysaurus. I should correct. Everybody has like 6 names, guys, so I know them all by different names. What is your favorite race? And before you answer that, just know that if you say anything but Argonian, Guppysaurus is going to be a little bit disappointed. Uh,
I'm sorry. I'll have to disappoint you. I'm really sorry, but it's not Argonian.
okay.
The first race that I played was Breton, but mainly because I feel like Breton is a little more easier to make a beautiful character. This is totally personal opinion, so so don't take me really serious on that. but I don't feel like ESO is a beautiful game. Like the character creation is not that engaging. I don't feel like the races are
Sure.
that beautiful. And Breton was the one that I felt it was the most beautiful. And I was like, oh, it's a meta healer class. Let's start playing healer. But for tanking, um, I also did a Breton on my first tank, which
Okay.
was my Arcanist. But I was doing something really crazy. I was tanking with Magica. I was doing Theory Craft. I was doing like the Trifocus passive, and it worked pretty well. But I had to do a lot of Theory Craft to make it possible in the time. It's a long story anyway. But then my first real character, which was Sork, the first character that I actually make to play like hard content and trial stuff, it was a Red Guard. And I still think Red Guard is probably like the easiest class for you to start tanking, the easiest race. I'm
Yep.
sorry, for you to start tanking. Like by far the easiest one in this regard. And that's why it was my choice. After a little bit, I was like, oh, I could have made a Nord. But then when I started thinking about other aspects, I wouldn't make my Sork a Nord. Even nowadays, that I make like Nord characters, Nord Necro, Nord, DK. My Sork is a Red Guard, and I really enjoyed Red Guard. I also feel like it's pretty beautiful. It has a little bit of the appearance, more Brazilian style, to be honest, because like the skin tone is a little different. It has a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and it's also really good for tanking. Like the sustain, the extra sustain that it has, I think it's probably like the best for anyone that's starting the game.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A couple of things here. What's up, Were? So yeah, Guppysaurus, is agreeing here that that's fair. Their first character was a Bosmer, and then they came to love Argonians. I think that that's what most people start off with is picking the class or the race rather. I'm sorry that you want to play and that is the most fun. I play Dark Elves for kind of the same reason. Not they don't look that great, but I kind of like the flavor a lot. And then, yeah, to answer the question, yeah, red guards not only do they can regenerate stamina while blocking, and just to kind of cut short that comparative analysis of video, a couple of things that we learned is one is like recoveries while blocking is really what everybody's talking about when they're talking about tank classes and setups, and that the actual recoveries are actually not that different. And when you look at recoveries per second for the various classes, a red guard gives almost as good as the best class for regenerating resources while blocking. So the thing that people say about DK being so easy to regenerate stamina, a red guard essentially does a similar job. Now there's nuance to that, but that's actually true. And so yeah, that's why red guard can make one of the easiest classes to or races. I'm sorry to tank on. What's up, Spark Rip? Spark Rip's here. What else we got here? Dunmer lore is best lore. Cake Man says. What do Dark Elves taste like? Daedric says. Redguard DK tank should have insane stamina recovery. I think a Nightblade Redguard, actually, though, Robert, is probably even crazier. Or a Sork,
Yeah,
even.
yeah, yeah.
I think that's one of the things
Night Blade will be easier, probably, like
Yeah.
more automatic. You feel,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I just have to keep some damage down. I love Khajiit. One of my I play as one of my night blades. Dunmers taste like mushrooms. That makes sense, Robert. We got everybody talking about okay, Khajiit, Nightblade main. I agree, siphoning strikes OP. Okay. Spark, if you got anything you want to add to this, feel free to drop in, man, or whatever. Cool. Well, that kind of I don't know. I think we kind of got the background and stuff. A couple of the things that I wanted to, because we're talking about misconceptions here. So I
yeah,
just want to say that and again, Luna, disagree with me if you do, or anybody in chat, right? I feel like at this point, and I kind of want to talk about this a little bit more later in the week, specifically just with ESO in general, but I really do think we've gotten to the point where they've actually fulfilled on the promise of you really can play what you want. Now,
yeah.
sure,
That's true.
in the most like optimized content, yeah, there's always going to be some better, best option. There's various reasons, sure, but for the vast majority of players, for the average group just trying to clear content, there actually is it's pretty much wide open. I mean, yes, you want a warden, healer, and yes, ideally you would like various buffs or particular abilities from various classes in your group, but you can, generally speaking, get everything else, really everything that you want in a group, just with, it doesn't matter what classes you actually have. And yes, will you be losing the 10% extra damage from Berserk if you don't have a sorcerer? Yes. Could you be missing a class specific source of minor savagery, or which is like going to be your uh, weapon damage, or the equivalent in spell damage, or the equivalent of minor oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what it's called, but the minor critical weapon or spell damage that you get from a Nightblade. Is it brutality? Maybe I'm getting those two confused. Anyways,
Yeah, I always confuse those, but yeah, I think it's
brutality.
brutality and something.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. So yes, there are some things you could miss with those. Here's the thing: you don't even need a Nightblade anymore. You really don't, because most, and the reason for that is because most DPS classes, or really all DPS classes, if they're running an optimal setup, will have that stuff. Now in the standard pug group, will that be true? No, you'll be missing stuff, but you're always missing stuff in those pug groups, and so when you're getting down to the point where like, oh, we want a Sork for this, berserk up time, you're in your average group, not even a pug group, even your average guild group, you are not dropping ultimates when you should. You are trying to get everybody to stay alive, to vaguely use the skills that are appropriate for what they're doing, and I think that's it. And have fun. Like I don't know what else there is, and it really doesn't matter anymore what classes you're bringing. Yes, you if you bring kind of a generic sampling of whatever classes are out there, and so I think in that way, huge credit to you know whoever's working on, and maybe it's an accident. I'd love well. It wasn't an accident. We're hold on. I need some copium. It wasn't an accident, and it's a huge credit to them for absolutely for doing that, for finally making it play the way you want. IMO. Somebody disagree with me, or I don't know.
Oh, about this, to be honest, I think we should make like one thing extremely clear to everybody that's listening and is interesting about tanking. Like all those min maxing stuff, and it's not only about tanking. Like I think it's about the entire game. All those min maxing stuff is for really, really, really high end stuff. Like for such a small percentage of players of this game, that is probably not relevant to you. It maybe will never be relevant to you unless you really want to step in that higher level. But if you're like starting to enjoy the game, if you want to engage with the game, you should most definitely not worry about this. And still in this matter, like talking about the races that we were talking about earlier, I think races it's even a crazier thing about that because like it really doesn't matter. You can tank with anything. Like I was doing a trial with a raid leader that it's a really good player. It's from NA. His name is Deshaun, and I appreciate him a lot because he taught me a bunch of stuff, and I played with his group for a long time and learned a lot playing with them. And he also tanks. And he was like, "Oh, we were doing Hawk Grove hard mode, and Hawk Grove is one of the trials that have like one of the most intense and difficult off tank fights in the game." And he was like, "Oh, I don't even have like a tank race. I just tank in my night elf, dark elf. Sorry, I just tank with my dark elf and
Right.
whatever. I don't even have like the my defense cap, like my armor cap. It doesn't matter that much. I can do it like with 29k armor with my dark elf, and it's just fine. So if even that hard content in the game, that's arguably the hardest fight for an off tank, you can do like that. Why would you that's starting the game, that's still not definitely not in that level, why would be you like worrying with those minimum super minimum stuff?
Yeah, and I think
So I think
that's
that the most important here is like play what you like.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I guess two things on that note too. There are so the first thing is that you know people don't understand the Grand Canyon that exists between starting the game and doing sweaty hard game in game content. I would imagine that Luna, you have probably had one of the quickest rises from like walking into the game to actually being in sweaty, super sweaty in-game content. And how long did that take you?
I think I started the game in June last year, and
Okay,
in about like
that's
3 or 4.
crazy.
When was the Gold Road patch? Was it like July? I think something around July.
Okay.
Really? Yeah, yeah.
G-
And after that,
good, good.
okay, I really started playing tank when the Gold Road chapter dropped.
Okay.
And it was crazy because there was a new trial, and the new trial, which is Lucent Citadel, was the first trial that I farmed a set from, which is really crazy.
Well, how long
Uh,
till when did you start playing ESO?
I started like I feel like it was right before June, like May,
Oh, okay. So
probably
when
May.
you started tanking fairly quickly, even though you started with
Yeah,
healer.
yeah. It took me a month or two
Okay.
maximum. So I already had my account like max level with some CP, etc., etc. And when I started playing, I really engaged with the game. Like it took me to tank to really engage with the game.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it was like about 3 months, two or three
That's
months until I was doing
crazy.
like hard stuff and really more sweaty stuff. Probably
Okay.
3 months, I guess.
Yeah, that's crazy fast. Crazy fast. Most people play for years and still never get to that point. I have not ran as sweaty and as difficult of stuff as Luna has, just to be clear, guys. And I've been playing for, I don't know. Uh, I think this last bout like 4 years, a little bit more, 4.5 or something like that. So that's absolutely wild. One of the things too that you'll find when you do get to the point where you are sweaty is that like how like we can you can level a character incredibly fast. Would you generally speaking agree with that, Luna?
Totally, totally. You can do it like in a day or two maximum. And I did it
Yeah.
like several times because my account's super new and I have a bunch of characters. And how would I be doing that?
Yeah, if you're just like, hey, I need this class, I need this race, I need this whatever, you can just go do it by the time you get to the point where you're sweaty enough. Because one of your in-game friends can come and just like, you go to Black Rose Prison in a couple of hours and you're leveled up and stuff like that. And sure, it can be a little bit more difficult with a various Mages Guild or whatever PvP, but it's still not that bad. I just want to catch up on a few comments. Where Moogle earlier said, I can't disagree. Unfortunately, I'm on the verge of starting a cult. He was saying I can't disagree as far as like play what you want, but he says I'm on the verge of starting a cult of the two-handed healer because he's been playing around with the two-handed healer. No resto staff build,
That's cool. That's cool.
just for
Probably
fun.
with describing two-handed.
Yeah, yeah. Robert Miller says. Is EC Crow and Zenkosh DK not class specific anymore? Any classes can fill those roles. So, as far as EC Crow and Zenkosh, so Zenkosh has long not needed to just be a DK. And I'm sorry, that is one of the other things you will want in a group is a Zenkosh. I apologize for not saying that. Zenkosh you do generally speaking one in a group. It's probably I mean I don't know. I could argue with you on a Warden if it's really needed, but I think Zenkosh is like one of the few things. But even then you can get around that. But it doesn't need to be on a DK. No, you can do it. It just makes sense on a DK for a lot of different reasons. You're already in melee, so you can always hit with a Kosh. You have a bunch of sticky hots, which is what you need for Zen or whatever it is. And a Warden though can do it really well, and plenty of other classes can. And then Daedric here says only reason for most groups is the extra burden of building the group comp correctly. You can run whatever wacky group, and you have to go down the checklist to make sure that you have the source of each buff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that can be, and you also find that with tanks as well. That a lot of people they want you to run a tank that they can tell you what to do on so that they know how to help you. And a lot of people don't even know the basics of how to run a Nightblade or the basics of how to run a Templar tank. And so they don't know how to tell you what to do and what skills to use because it's a lot of stuff. And so they'll want you to run on a class that they can help you with. And then C here says, I would love to tank more, but most people want a tank that's already done most of the vet content to do the vet content. Yeah, it's like circular logic. C, absolutely. I get to take random normal dungeons. Yeah, yeah. What I would say to that is that if you can practice in four mans, you can practice in pugs, but if you get really good at the basics of tanking, in like harder DLC dungeons, maybe hard modes or whatever, those skills are directly transferable into trials. And if you learn to stay alive in those situations, especially some of the harder hitting dungeons, keep your rotation up, it's a one to one, you know, excuse me, it's completely transferable. If they and they let give you a chance then to come in to do something and you do a great job because you've done a bunch of dungeons, they're gonna immediately like bump you up and start putting you in content because a great tank is incredibly hard to find. And so like being a good tank is the easiest way to get into sweatier content because DPS can sometimes be no, they can be hard to find, but they're a lot more plentiful, just pure numbers than a tank. And then Robert Miller said, "Oh my God, that's so fast! I've been playing way longer and still haven't picked a main." Yeah, there you go. All right, cool, cool. Really, I'd be interested in the power leveling strat. Yeah, Black Rose Prison. Yeah, it takes 40 minutes for 3 to 50 during an XP event to do Black Rose Prison. Yeah, yeah. Nobody to even do vet dungeons with. Yeah, I mean, see that can be difficult to find a group. I think finding a guild, finding a group of friends can be tricky. What platform were you on? Um, and then while C's answering that, I wanted to say one more thing about this because it does need to be addressed a bit. I would say for the longest time, and there was this really big contingent in game, and there's a group of people, there was discords where or groups of people where I mean ZOS sponsored and still continues to do this, and all companies do this. It's not just ZOS continues to sponsor and like have people in their stream teams and whatever that are incredibly toxic, that are not nice people. And I don't mean that somebody having a bad day, catching someone at their worst or whatever. And I get frustrated. I've been a jerk to people and I'm like, yeah, that was wrong. I am talking about where the entire Discord, the entire like someone says something like, where Moogle coming in and talking about his two-handed healer would just get hated on. Just get people just being mean and toxic for no other reason. And that was a huge contingent in the in-game community. And what has happened with some of the changes in the past like year or so is that a lot of those people have left, and a lot of them have those discords have fallen apart. Sorry, I have like rabbit fur on my face. And that has been honestly like a really great thing. I will still say that those people still exist and they're still out there and they're still trying to. But those people, whenever someone would offer the idea of taking on something besides a DK, would just hate, or anything that wasn't meta would just hate and act like it was the worst and the dumbest thing in the world by people that are just trying to get in the game, that are just trying to learn, that are just trying to barely start the game. And it is so good for the end game. And you know what the thing is, that there would be representatives from ZOS in those discords that would pop in to answer questions and to like talk with those people. And that adds a lot of credence to who they are and to what they have to say and to their various thoughts on topics, that a lot of weight to it, that really it's just like, oh, so the in game in ESO is just a toxic cesspool, is I think what many people felt like. Um, I don't know if you have anything you want to. No need to step into that, Luna, if you don't have anything to add to it.
I don't know that much about the community. I
Okay.
still feel fresh about this game, to be
Okay.
honestly. Even though I played like for a year now, not a year. Oh my god, not even a year. But still, like I never engaged that much with people, so I don't know that much. The only bit of knowledge that I have is from what I consumed, like learning the game, and it was not that bad for me. At least I didn't went through any like super um awkward or bad situation. I heard about some stuff, but I'm pretty cool.
Well, that's good.
Hopefully.
That's great. That's great. They didn't. Spark here says, "I'm still going to meme on a sword and shield healer." So if a build is like done to be a meme and to be fun or whatever, um, then I think that it's appropriate. You don't want to go into content where you're not going to be able to do your job, with a wacky build that doesn't make any sense. You've got 40k health on a healer with a sword and board and a couple of DPS skills, and people are dotting out, right? I have literally seen stuff like that happen. We don't want that. That's not what we're talking about. But that's a
Yeah.
far cry than having a Nightblade tank or having um,
Yeah.
a DK healer, right? Like those are there's a people often equate these things, and it's like no, there's a a mile between those two different things. UZHP says Black Rose is quickest, but if you're trying to level up your fighter's guild at the same time, then Skyreach is better choice. Yeah, and you know what I do, guys, is I just do like a daily random normal and do daily random PvP so that I level the PvP skill line and then do the random normal for the skill point and for the Undaunted, and typically you get some um, Fighters Guild as well, depending on what dungeon you get. And that's what I do. And I do that on a new character, and then I log off. And I don't even it doesn't even matter when it is. Pop an XP scroll and what have you. Yeah. Where
Yeah,
Moogle
it
says
works.
thank. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, no, fine.
Uh,
I just say it works.
yeah,
It
yeah,
works.
yeah. And
Doing that is always good,
you get
especially the
transmutes.
PvP one.
Yeah, you get transmutes that way. So it's really just like what there's a lot of different ways to do it, and it's whatever works for you. I don't know what my total time to level is, but if you run through a random normal can be. I mean, if you get a bad group, it's going to be a minute. But if you get a quick group, and if you tell friends in your sweaty in game guild that you're on a level 15, they know they're going to get like fungal grotto, so they're absolutely are down to run a
Yeah, that's
random
true.
normal with you. It's going to take 10 minutes, maybe literally 10 minutes, and then I usually would get like 2 to 3 levels. If it's an XP event, you can get like 4 at certain levels, and then you log off. So I don't know I mean, maybe BRP is quicker than that, probably it is, but not by a whole lot, honestly, and you get a bunch of stuff. Where Moogle says, thankfully everyone has let me prove it's worth it instead of kicking nowadays. Oh, that's awesome. Cool, cool. As long as it isn't a two-handed bow healer. I mean, okay. Sparkrip said I had a sword and shield healer attempt to heal um, BS hard mode. Let's say it didn't go great. Yeah, yeah. If it's if it's difficult content hard modes and you're doing something insane like that, it's kind of like why are you doing that and what's the point? Where Moogle said, but also the difference from when I used to play years ago and nowadays. If you did the wrong thing once in a vet dungeon, you would get kicked. Now it takes a lot of that amount of toxicity to come. Okay, yeah, so people aren't kicking you the first time they see something go wrong or whatever. And then Spark Rip,
That's good.
yeah, Spark Rip says Fungal Grotto is more like 3 minute, a 3 minute dungeon. Well, there you go. All right, cool.
Yeah, yeah, super fast, super fast. Oh, and to be honest, Knight, in this regard of like people doing crazy stuff with crazy builds, I'm the person doing crazy stuff with crazy builds. I play the meta, but I also do that because
Yeah.
it's fun. And honestly, we need people doing crazy stuff. Because whenever you do something crazy, like with a bunch of theorycraft, you learn from it.
Oh
Even though
yeah.
like this might not be useful in a real content, you learn
Sure.
from it. The only video I have on my YouTube channel, like the only ESO video, is a parse with sword and shield. I was doing DPS with sword and shield, and I could like, and for I made this character in the live server because first it was only on PTS, and I played with it, and I did trials with it, and I even got like top damage with it because even though it was not the best, if
Yeah.
I could play like good enough with that and I had fun with that, it could work. And like you can do a bunch of crazy stuff and still work and still be viable. Of
Yeah.
course, you don't want to be like that person responsible for the group not clearing something, so you have to measure whatever you're doing.
Sure.
But doing those crazy stuff is important for the game. Like that, this is the fun about ESOs that you can think a bunch of crazy combinations, and sometimes they even work. And I think it's cool. We have like to keep doing that, but of course, having like just that sounds like to not bring it to content that you shouldn't be like be experimenting, or
Yeah.
at least you say people you try to find people that want to experiment those crazy stuff with you, then that's okay. But otherwise, I think it's really important to have like all those crazy ideas and crazy builds put together, and people should be theory crafting all that. I think it's like most of my fun in the game was doing theory craft. was like reading stuff, was playing on PTS, not even the live server.
Yeah, I think having the curiosity, I think that it's really important, and I think that's what when there has been toxicity, like that's what it ruins, and what you'll often have is people that'll learn one thing, and then they'll be like, well, this is the way something is done, and then they'll kind of feel superior to other people, and they'll stop learning, they'll stop being curious, and if you and this is like these are life skills, honestly. If you really want to, like, the best thing to do is to have an open mind. The best thing is to be curious,
Exactly.
question.
Exactly. When you close yourself, you stop learning. You stop learning when you close
Exactly.
yourself like to a single strategy or a single way to play the game.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You'll find that time and time again when people become arrogant, when they think they know everything. When you think you know everything, what is there left to learn? Nothing. And so having that, that grip of humility to say, "Hey, I don't know everything. I don't have it all figured out," it's incredibly important. And I think all of us a little bit in Endgame have gotten that too recently, where we're like, "Oh, it appears that Zoss doesn't know how the game works," and Spark Rip here did a ton of data gathering on the way damage mitigation was actually going down, and I think that was informative to pretty much everybody in game. Um, as far as like learning new info. Where Moogle says it's why I'm mad that this healer is working. It shouldn't. All right, we'll catch you later. Where Moogle, he's got to get back to work. Yeah. Okay. Well, those are a handful of. I'm trying to think. We kind of sold this as like as misconceptions. I'm looking at one right now. I have it actually on the screen, and that is that resistances is the
Okay.
thing that that you have to
Yeah.
be a Nord to get to resistance cap. And I think people that have watched the channel a lot, I've talked about this. I keep trying to bring it up to make it very clear, but that's one that pops into my head. Is there anything that pops into yours, Luna, or anything?
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely a big one because first, it's not true,
Right.
and second, it's not needed. You don't need to play on resistance cap necessarily to
Yeah.
do like most of the content. So I think those are two big things to talk about. Like those are 2 points, important points. Because you have
Yeah.
a lot of things to work around with resistance cap. You have like the trait on the weapon, which is basically the free buff from the race. It's almost like a Mundus stone. In terms of defense, it's super strong. You have other. Maybe that's not min maxing, but if you want to min max in other aspects, you can drop a little bit your resistance cap. You don't need to be on the cap and still do the thing. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's like one of the things too with all of these setups, whether you're doing DPS or tanking or whatever, that it applies very broadly, is that if you want to go with one or two things that are not the meta choice, it's very little loss, whether that's on DPS, healing, or tanking. If you want to go with 10 or 15 things or really big things like not running a resto staff like what Weremugel is talking about, then it's going to be a lot harder and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are potentially losing a lot there. And so like picking a few things, and I think for most people, playing the race you won is like top tier for like important things for them, even super sweaty
Yeah.
people. And so picking, you know, that to me is like, hey, this might be a place where most people really want to just play the thing that they want to play, even if it's not meta, even if they are doing really sweaty content for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. My specific take on Nord, more specifically, because I feel like people talk too much about the defense, the armor that it gives. I don't think it's even about the armor. I think it's about the OT gen, because you have other ways to like kind of work around the armor. Depending on the class that you want to play, like the armor isn't even like an issue. If you're playing Arcanist, you don't even care about armor at all because you have so much armor already packed in your kit. It's not a thing. But the OT gen is definitely something unique from the race. But to which person that OT gen is used? Like, when do you use your OT? Was exactly when you get the ultimate. When you is it important to you? Like, it's such a small number that it gives. It's only for super well organized groups with a raid leader calling things like exactly on time when you feel like you're ulting exactly when you get your ult because it was
Yeah.
the perfect timing that your raid leader needed. Oh, that's the point. And I went through it. And at that point, Nord was decent for me because like I got like probably 3 or 4 seconds to have my ult before, and that made me possible to keep like a major vulnerability from with my Nazare, and I could see like it being relevant. But when is it relevant? It's such a super sweaty thing. You
Yeah,
shouldn't be like worrying about. And Nord will definitely not be the easiest one to tank. And if you can
right.
tank in any race, why would you pick like something that's not even the easier one?
Right. Right. If you're trying to pick like the quote unquote meta choice. And well, and I think we also really saw this whenever, again, in that recent, it was eye opening for me when I did the comparative analysis on all the various tank classes, is realizing that, wait, these all have basically the same sustain, like fairly close. It's really the stamina sustain while blocking that is different, and that DKs
Yeah.
actually have worse stamina sustain than most of the other options. And it's by
DKs have no regen. The sustain from DK from natural regeneration is awful. You have
yeah.
nothing.
And so it really is like getting back that stamina while blocking that is what people are really talking about, even though people would not say that, and would even say the opposite of it, because, oh, you're supposed to drop block if you're good because you know when to, so you can just recover. And it's like, well, why is DK the best then? Because their passive regeneration on stamina isn't very high. And so there's been a little bit of this like talking out of both sides, of your mouth. They were basically saying two opposite things to remove the expression out of it. We say talking out of both sides of your mouth is kind of a way like, oh, it's because the sweaty stuff, but also like anyways, it just doesn't fully compute for me. Another thing I'll say is that about the ultimate, you're saying that the ultimate is the biggest thing for you. I feel like with on access, like on demand, major heroism now via trample, even if you are really sweaty, because it used to be that there were certain fights that if you wanted to ignore all the mechanics and do the really sweaty strat, you wanted your tank to permanently magma shell. And that window to be able to
Yeah.
permanently magma shell was incredibly small. And if you missed it by a second, you died and the group wiped because you had to always have it up. And it literally was down to like the ultimate, and being on a Nord would get you over that, but you also had to run heroism potions and everything else. That is no longer true. We did not have a
That's
good
true.
source of major heroism, which is a ridiculous amount of ultimate now. So now I really feel like the ultimate matters even less, even if you are trying to do something like perma magma shell.
Yeah, that's totally true. When you say like that, I just get back to what I was saying, that I was like in the situation that maybe the UTGen from Nord was useful to me. If I had like any other race and just popped like a trample whenever I had the opportunity, one single trample was probably would probably be enough to compensate for the whole passive
Right.
until my next ultimate. So yeah, that's totally true. That's totally fair. So I feel like the min max about the race is more about like comfort and not having um to resource that whatever this race gives you through other stuff. So it's more about that and not about like only with this race you will get this.
Yeah.
It's more like with this race you won't need to source it from another stuff. So
Right.
for other stuff. So I think it's more like in this direction.
Yeah, and I'm guilty too of like thinking that Nord was better than they were also. So take that for what it is. A couple of comments here. Sparkrip says, I did prove that Zoss has no clue how their game worked since they started fixing things as soon as I started poking at it. 100% Spark. Spark is totally right, guys. You could get, and it happened honestly probably for years, where people were running around in PvP completely immune to damage. You ever find someone in low health and you just couldn't do any damage to them? Like, somebody had figured it out, some people, and then kept it a closely guarded secret that you could get 100% damage mitigation, and that's some of the stuff that Spark figured out. Not to mention a bunch of other issues, which should be fairly embarrassing for them, to be totally honest. Hey, Crafty Pappy, it's good to see you, man. Sparker says, you don't understand. I need to be at 500 ultimate for 30 seconds, not for 20. Yeah, Sparkrip is referencing what Luna was saying, which is that, like, if you can generate an ult, but your ultimate isn't being called for or you don't need it yet, it's wasted. So he's saying, like, oh yeah, so you're sitting at 500 ult, which is what most people do. I even do this in my trials. If I'm running around in a training trial, I am not trying to call ultimates, and because of that, because I don't have to do it very often, I'm kind of bad at it, to be totally honest. For for what a raid lead should do, whenever we're doing our hard mode or very difficult content progs, I learn when the rotation should be, and I get much better at calling it. But it's not like a universal skill that I have yet. I'm sure eventually I'll get there. But yeah, oftentimes I'm trying to get the tank not to die. I'm trying to get the group to do the mechanics so that we don't have a complete party wipe. A little bit more damage from ulti is not going to solve the problem in most, unless it is, in which case I focus on that. But usually it's not. Usually it's not about getting a little bit more DPS, especially now. It used to be more the case, like Yolnagrin, for example, like on hard mode, the first time you'd go in there, you had to have a certain amount of DPS to avoid getting a second set of Atros on Yolnagrin specifically. And because if you got a second set of Atros, usually in a training group, your off tank isn't good enough to be able to handle it. So they would die. Okay, so like there's things like that that used to matter, but that's not really the case anymore. Even if your group is not dropping ultis on time, you can usually have enough damage even on hard mode to be okay. And yeah, I could go more into depth on that, but it's absolutely true. So if you're sitting, there's other things too where there's certain places in a fight where you ultimate, and it's like, well, we really want the ultimate when the DPS that we're doing a portal mechanic come back, and then we hit our ultimate at this time. Well, you might have had your ultimate up 20 minutes or 20 seconds before that now, and so you don't need more ultimate because you already have the ultimate you needed for, and you're just waiting on that DPS window to have it happen. Lenny Linguini says, "What is this juicy video popping up on my feed?" Hey, what's up, Lenny? It's good to see you. Cool. Well, so I think we talked about resistances. Like you can get there a bunch of different ways, and yes, maybe you're giving up a little bit in certain situations. It really depends on the class you're on, but you can get to resistance cap. I also feel like for new tanks, it's really important to get to resistance cap because that is the build part of your setup. So I do highly recommend that people actually get to it. I think it's one of the number one mistakes that new tanks make is not getting to resistance cap, because once you're there, that's your build. You don't have to think about that when you're in content. Yeah, you have to keep up major
Yeah,
resolve, but like you needed to do that anyways. You need your major
yeah,
resolve.
yeah. That's exactly how I started.
Yeah, and so
Everything you build.
yeah, it'll reduce your damage, and once your build is set up, you don't have to think about it, where you can focus on pressing buttons or what have you. And then yeah, race, a red guard is going to be absolutely the best thing for you as a new tank. It's going to make the things absolutely the most easiest, but again, you can kind of play on whatever. Let's should we talk? I don't know what else. Should we talk about unique buffs, guys? Do you have questions about anything that you want to drop in the comments here? You want us to talk about or address or um, throw out anything spicy? Luna, do you have anything else that pops into your mind?
Just pointing, like, since we talk about resistance cap, red guard with Lady Mundus, it's super fine. And when you're starting the game, you won't have like a high CPM enough that you'll be like spending that much magica. You don't need like the Atronac Magica Mundus necessarily, especially when you're starting. And stamina will be something that you will want because you probably when you're starting you will be perma blocking a lot because that's what everybody does because they don't feel confident to
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the knowledge to know when to drop block, and maybe they don't even need it. And it's super fine to play with Lady Mundus Stone and not use a regeneration Mundus Stone. That's totally okay. I just wanted to exemplify one thing, just to make something really clear that all those things that we say that are good, that are like optimal and best for certain situations, yes, they are, but they are like they are not needed. And my example is, I was doing like yesterday, we were doing a trifecta of Oathsworn Pit, which is a dungeon, one of the newers. I think it's from last year. For me, it's as old as any of the other dungeons because when I started playing, it was already there. But anyway, I was making a tank, and I wanted to tank as an arc. Because if I could arc tank that dungeon and be providing shields to my friends, they could skip some stuff like the extra from the second boss. They could skip that, and that was really useful and would make like the run pretty safer. And the build that I did, just hear that. The build that I did for my tank, it was half Magica, half HP. So 32 points on Magica, 32 points on HP. I was playing without Atronek Mundus Stone. I was playing with Magica Mundus Stone. I was not running a food with resources regeneration. I was running like a Bewitched Sugar Schools. I had my Magica way over my stamina. So I was doing everything wrong, everything that we don't advise people to do. Like have your
Yeah.
stamina higher than your Magica. Have the resistance cap. I didn't have the resistance cap. The resistance cap. I think I play mostly with 29k armor, and I was doing everything wrong. My regeneration was not that good, but I was an Arcanist, so Arcanist is a little
Yeah.
better. It's
Right.
way more affordable to do that. Just making it clear, so it was possible. I was not like just uh, trolling, and that build, as crazy as it sounded, was great for doing a trifecta. I could keep all my allies shielded all the time. I could get, like be constantly providing them 12k shields. I would have a barrier that was insanely strong because it was a specific build made for shields. And I was doing everything that we tell you not to do, because with the knowledge that I have and the experience that I have, I know that we don't need all that we say, all that we tell you to do. And I think this is something important. Like the game is not um, that close to single builds. You can mess around like with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I was starting, and I was like looking to your guides, I would do like all the checklist. I will
Yeah.
have like all my
Right.
defense. I will have my flare on front bar. I will have everything. I will have my block mitigation, my bracing anchor, everything like just to play safe. And it's great to start. But the more you play, the more you see you can like play around with those stuff and still do super nice.
That's really
So the game
interesting.
is not as close as people think it is.
Right, to just be able to get through the content. I think that's really interesting because what you're essentially saying is that the more sweaty you are, the more difficult content and stuff, the actual wider open your options become, which is a bit of the opposite of what most people would say, where like, oh, the sweatier content you do, the less options you have because you're not going to be able to get through the content without doing the right thing. And I think in some ways both of those things can be true. Like
Yeah, both.
if you're a less skilled tank, and again, Luna, your experience is like, going in 4 months or 6 months or whatever to like, that's that you're an outlier. If you were in a data set, we would disregard you because you're an outlier. Most people it takes much longer than that, and some people will honestly just never get there. They're just not gonna. They don't want to invest the time and the energy it takes to get a lot better. And so, like, if they're just trying to get through content and they don't want to spend the time and energy, then, they do probably need to go with whatever seems like the most optimal. But it's kind of interesting that, and I think this is another thing that you'll find with a lot of in-game sweaty in-game players is that the ones that are truly knowledgeable are curious and are constantly trying things out, and they're trying out stuff they know that won't work. Like, for example, what Weremugel was talking about earlier, where like he's like, yeah, I tried this build. It's kind of a meme, and I'm just doing it for fun. I'm gonna heal without a resto staff. People that will do stuff like that will learn. You learn so much about the game whenever you're learning, to make those kind of builds. We did have a question here for you, Luna. Sparkrip was asking what kind of like sweaty stuff have you done in terms of content. Um, I don't know if we talked about specifics. Can you tell us like
Okay,
some
okay,
specifics?
okay. That's important to say because like maybe I'm sounding like too good, and I'm not that good of a player. Of course, I did some sweaty stuff, but I'm still working on my trifectas on trials.
Yeah,
But honestly, what I did like that was probably the most sweaty stuff that I did was like probably Dread Sales hard mode. I went through all of it, all the strats, all know how to play all the hard mode trials, even the most difficult ones. I was on a PB prog, like Planesbreaker, which is from Rockgrove. I learned a bunch of that, of everything about the game there, doing like sweaty stuff, sweaty strats, speed stuff, like speed strats, doing DPS on Oaks while tanking and this kind of thing. And I did a lot of that, not to the point that I got like all my trifectas and stuff, because I don't, being fully honest here, I don't play the game that much. on those first 3 months that I told you, like where I started playing the game and I got into like the hard stuff. I played a lot during that period of time. But after that, I only log in to play trials, and I'm not signing up to a bunch of trials because I'm being totally honest with you guys. I don't feel like going in Adra or other like discords for people like that run trials. I don't feel like signing up for a bunch of stuff there because um, if I don't feel like a connection with people, maybe that sounds like too much, but if I don't feel like people care about each other there, and if I don't feel like part of a group more in a like friendly way, maybe I feel like people. I don't know. It's not that interesting to
You're
me.
in
So
for the
whenever I have
personal
a
connection. You're in for the
yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's fair.
yeah, I like to have that connection, and all those discords, they feel like people don't almost felt like a job, to be honest. Like when you get into a trial and talking to people, the people request stuff to you, they don't talk to you, they don't reach you, it's almost like so I felt a little off from the game because of that, but I'm still like catching back to play with friends. I recently found a Brazilian guild that they are really good. They can do like really well. They play really well content, and they have trifectas, and it was the first time that I found like a Brazilian group that could do like super sweaty stuff, and I'm pretty happy about that. So I'm playing with them currently whenever I can. And that wasn't the boss. It's probably the place that I never left and still playing whenever I can and doing trials with more. I did trials with Daedric,
Yeah.
all amazing raid leaders that we have there. And whenever I can, I'm also doing stuff with Noni.
Well, I and
So
I,
I'm not that super high level tank. Please don't put me in this pedestal because I'm not. Okay, I
yeah.
just did a bunch of stuff and gathered a bunch of different experience and played a bunch of different tanks. And to be honest, I think the greatest point here is that I read a lot about the game and I research it a lot. I think this is
Yeah.
the main thing.
You have as much knowledge and almost certainly more than I have about the game as someone who's been playing the game for pretty hardcore for like 4 years. So that is that's my endorsement of Luna too. If Luna's telling you something, you should listen in a trial is usually I think I've said that exact expression or exact statement to a few people. Like if Luna's saying something, she's probably right. And if it contradicts with something I'm saying, then she's probably right. Um, I'm
You
probably
don't overestimate me too much, please.
no, but I mean, you are very analytical, and you have put a ton of time into like learning what's going on with the game by looking at all the different sources, stuff that I do, but also stuff that like SparkRip does, or that Hyper does, or whatever. You're someone who like looks and absorbs a great deal of knowledge and stuff too. And I honestly, yeah. So and we all forget stuff. Like sometimes you'll or someone says something, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I did kind of know that at one point, but I don't really remember. I want to catch up a few of these chats here. One thing to be thinking about is SparkRip mentioned traits on the body, so that can be our next thing to talk about here.
Oh, that's cool. Cool.
Um, let me see here. Okay, Robert Miller said he found your sword and board parse and that it's amazing.
Oh yeah.
uh,
My channel is here. I just typed something in chat
oh,
in
okay.
case anyone is curious. It's just a single video. There's nothing for you to really look at. But anyway.
Okay, cool. Chicken says one day I'll become a dungeon hardbound tank. Hey man, no day like today. Crafty Happy says, make today the day. Okay, cool. And then Sparkrip says the axe can be kited for that boss, so just have DDs
Yeah.
close by parsing. And oh, sorry. Google thinks I'm talking to it for some reason. It's like yelling at me in the background. The axe can be kited. Yeah, just have DDs closer parsing and healer gets axed. Also, Arc is stupidly beginner friendly in terms of horrible builds.
It's also true. Also true.
Yeah, the
The class
Arcanist.
is too packed for you to do crazy things.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get more blowback on how broken the Arcanist was for everything, and still
Yeah,
is.
everything. People forget how good it is for tanking, how good it is for healing. People
Yeah,
always forget about that just because they only think about the being and the DPS aspect of the class. It's
yeah.
amazing.
I was pretty salty that they took Brittle. And from my Brittleton builds, I'm still salty about. I think my wife is still salty about it too because she played the Brittleton. Yeah. Anyways, um, Robert Miller says, should we lean towards sword and board or staff for arc tanking? That's interesting. We can talk about that probably also more generally as another thing. And then Sparkrit says Wolf Tank best tank. Yeah, there we go. See Sparkrip, who's done a ton of like in-depth investigation into how that game is actually working because it didn't seem to be working right, and who has all this knowledge, has a bunch of resources and stuff like that he's made and shared with the community. Someone like Sparkrip is saying, hey, I want to play a werewolf tank, and I think that's what you often find with, we want to play the thing that's fun. We also would like, a big part of it is like we're constantly, I feel like, when we're mad at ZOS, like the in-game players, like historically have been, it's for good reason, guys. Because Sparkrip proved, and I mean, we know this on many different metrics that they don't know about their own game, and they also won't listen to us about their game. It's like pulling teeth. Maybe that's changing a little bit, but it's really frustrating when they clearly don't know about their own game. Literally, don't even know how the calculations are being done because they created things that were an issue. So they literally don't know how the calculations are being done. And that's just one
Yeah.
of many things. And then they also won't listen to the community whenever people like Sparkrip, whenever people, that are very knowledgeable, I've offered stuff, are trying to help make the game better and also trying to fulfill on the promises of like I want to be able to play the Templar tank and it'd be great. I want to be able to play the whatever tank and it be, you know, the fun game that we want it, like it still work, right? I want to do the sweaty in-game content, and I also want to be able to come on my whatever build, for the most part within reason. And yeah, that's absolutely a thing. Robert Miller says totally agree. Okay, cool. And then UCHP, I'm grateful to have my best friend in ESO Junior from Team Brazil. Oh, nice, which is considered to be the number one PlayStation in a trifecta group. Oh, okay, that's awesome. He's like second in command. Met that great hobbit a year and a half ago. That's my Luna. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, at this rate, like if we keep having these with all these Brazilians, because I have a very positive connotation when someone is from like Southeast Asia. I'm like, oh, they're probably going to pick the game up quickly. Oh, they're probably going to research and read. I don't know, if we keep getting these Brazilians that are doing the same, you guys are going to get the same reputation. um, cool. King
Oh,
James.
that's true. There's a bunch of Brazilian great friends that unfortunately it took a lot for me to meet really nice people from
Okay,
Brazil because ESO is not that popular in Brazil,
sure.
unfortunately. But yeah, there's amazing people from Brazil playing the game.
Oh, that's cool. King James became a pocket protector. Hey, man, thanks for becoming a channel member. Really appreciate it, guys. And all the channel members, give you guys a shout out, and those who donate on Kofi. It really is like I need you guys to be able to keep doing this. So I absolutely appreciate it, guys. Robert Miller said spaghetti code is a real issue in the game. Yeah, 100%. Sparkrip says I have like 10 plus bugs I can name right now that are semi game breaking in a positive way. So I'm not sharing that with Zoss. Oh, okay. Yeah, things that are broke. Yeah, there's absolutely, so Spark has more than I can think of off the top of my head, but there's absolutely things that are like they'll be broken and like broke, it's not working the way it's intended, but it's good, and it's good for the game. And it's like literally in-game players will not complain about it. We don't talk about it on streams because we don't want them to fix it. We don't want them to like break the
Yeah.
thing that isn't actually broken. And it's just a thing, guys. It's kind of funny. Daedric says Brazilians are gamers. Yeah. um, Hey, Tanner here says, kind of off topic. We'll see if we get to it then, Tanner, but not really. What scales bash damage better, enchanting jewelry with extra bash damage, or just more weapon and spell damage? Oh, that's a
This is my area. This is
okay.
my area. Weapon spell damage does nothing for your bash damage, really. So for bash, literally bash, you want like bashing jewelry with infused bashing, and that's basically it. But you still need spell damage and weapon damage for whatever you bring into your build. So you cannot rely only on the bash. But
Uh,
yeah, for solely bash weapon spell damage doesn't count
What?
unless you're playing something like if it's the sword and shield and it's the power slam, which scales with bash damage but also scales with weapon spell damage. And if it's a necromancer and you do like the big skeleton thing that I forgot the name,
Uh-huh.
and you do the bash, that bash scales with both bash damage and weapon spell damage, but those are exceptions.
Okay, he said even if using sword and board abilities, it's for PvP.
Yeah, for the sword and board abilities, you need the weapon spell damage. Yeah, because it scales all the abilities, including Power Slam, that also scales with Bash. That's why Power Slam is such a great spammable for PvP, because you can scale it with Bash damage and weapon spell damage, and it becomes like the super strongest spammable probably in the game.
Okay. Would you recommend jewelry then if they're doing a power bash build? Would you recommend bonus bash damage then on jewelry?
I would do, if it's for PvP, I will do bashing jewelry, the
Okay.
enchant for bashing, and with infused, definitely. If it's for PvP, no doubt.
Okay. There you go. Hopefully, Tanner, that answers your question. Man, that's a deep cut right there. That was a super specific one that I was not going to be able to answer. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for that, Luna.
I did it a lot, so I did a bunch of research.
Okay, that's really cool. Well, let's talk about body traits. I have
Yeah,
thoughts on
yeah, let's
this.
get into it.
Do you want to start
Yeah.
off or should I?
You start and I give my take.
Okay. My take on your body traits for a tank specifically is that none of them are really that good on a tank. That's my main takeaway. I don't really think that any of
Okay.
them are. There's nothing that's like, man, this is like, if someone came and completely off traded gear for a tank, I wouldn't be. It wouldn't bug me that much. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that for newer tanks, yeah, people are saying Robert's saying sturdy for all of it. So here's the thing. I think getting to resistance cap is really important, especially for new players. So again, I highly recommend making your build for that. And so having the extra resistances on your gear is one way that you could
Yeah.
help get to cap. And I think that that is not a bad idea for most tanks. I think it's a pretty good idea. There is the sturdy. Robert is saying sturdy for everything. I I should probably go back and try like all sturdy gear and see how it feels. It's a little hard for me at this point. I don't feel like block matters that much.
Yeah.
I mean, it can. There are certain fights and certain situations where they're intentionally designed to drain your stamina. But I think having a block jewelry enchant will usually do the trick for most people. Um, Having sturdy if you're perma blocking is probably a good idea. It probably
It's
is.
probably the best.
Yeah.
Probably the best you can do.
Um.
But still, reinforcer is really good on the bigger pieces like body armor. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
not putting reinforce is a waste
Yeah. Don't put reinforced
on
on your
that piece.
belt or your gloves. Do something else for those. And then
Yeah.
I think the only really third other thing that is really considered as far as like traits on your body is going to be divines for more magic
Yeah.
recovery. And it, yeah, it's probably the meta thing to do in certain very optimal situations if you're already at resistance cap and you probably don't need the extra block or reduced block cost. So sure, I don't want to recraft my gear. I have gear that I made in sturdy
Yeah.
from forever ago, and I
Yeah.
honestly just
Yeah.
like still use it or don't or whatever. And I just like sure I mean if you're score pushing or something, yeah, do whatever. I mean, you don't need my advice if you're score pushing. I don't think you can probably figure that out for yourself. And maybe divines is the best thing there, but I just think that it's the bottom of the three, and everything else that I can think of is just not really useful unless I'm missing something that I haven't thought about in a while.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. My take on that is even more like I think with some stuff we have to lean more into personal experience because like we do all the math for those small numbers, and in the
Yeah,
end, I think like the really small numbers they don't matter that much.
yeah,
And my personal experience, I never played with full divines. I never even used divines, to be honest. And I never went to a situation that I was out of magic in any class. And I think with all the classes, and and my CPM is probably the highest that you can imagine for a tank. I have like over 130 CPM on a fight playing with tank, and which is usually higher than the DPS from my group.
Yeah.
So I'm casting a bunch of skills, but you don't need that much magica.
Right.
So if you don't need divines, it's much easier, much better, much advisable, more advisable in my opinion, to run like the reinforce on your armor because it will help you to reach the cap, and you don't have like a lot of stuff to do with the trait anyway. So help reaching the cap is pretty cool, pretty decent, and will be like a must in a bunch of classes. Maybe the class that you're playing, like in case of if you're an arcanist or like a nord with a Nord with Dragon Knight, maybe you have enough armor that you don't need that. But anyway, at some point you will probably need some extra armor, and if you can drop armor from whatever else, from maybe your CP or whatever, is probably more useful. So usually what I do reinforced on the bigger pieces, which is probably I think in my choice it was like probably the foot, the pants, and the body armor. In the rest, I just do sturdy. Sturdy is pretty decent for someone that's starting. They will be perma blocking a lot, so sturdy is always a good option for that.
Yeah.
But there's some fights that maybe the well fitted is useful. I think this is one information that we may
Oh, yeah, yeah,
could
yeah.
like
That's another.
mention,
Yeah,
but it's so specific at the same
sure.
time that like if you make a set just because of that, you're already in a level of gameplay that you're worrying with super specific stuff and super specific fight. But if
Yeah.
you want to make like gear more like agnostic for your account, that's what I do. Reinforce on the chest, on two other pieces with high defense, the rest is sturdy, and you can go like you can run the entire game with it. At least in my opinion, I never got into trouble with like magic recovery or anything, honestly.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well fitted, for those who don't know, reduces your roll dodge cost, and that's actually, I love to roll dodge, and I've actually been thinking about this for a long time, and I just haven't done anything with it because again, it kind of just doesn't matter at a certain point. But having reduced roll dodge, if you're already at resistance cap, because again, many of my tanks are Nords, and you don't really need the Magicka recovery because you're fine on it, then going with like reduced roll dodge, if you don't need the block, is probably the best thing to do. So there actually are four options there. I should have been more clear, or been more accurate. But yeah, that's interesting. And I've thought about doing that on some tanks, partially because like, oh, if my roll dodges were cheaper, then maybe I could be less tanky and I could roll more attacks,
Yeah.
and then I could do something else. I
Yeah,
want
some
to.
people do it on Rock Grove, on the Basse fight for the off tank, since you're constantly dodge rolling, especially when you do like the Pringle sacks. A lot of people like to use well fitted in that fight.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, and like you said, making gear specifically for that is like you're already at a level where um, things have gotten pretty sweaty. I will also note, and this was something that occurred to me, just realizing it like that. Saturday night, I mentioned this earlier, guys. A hilarious video. Go check out the live stream. But we did a one tank, one healer, 10 DPS VSS hard mode, and we had people that didn't even know the
That's cool.
hard mode mechanics in that group, which made it hilarious. And one person who wasn't in comms, but we rolled what we had after. So I was like, I think I mentioned this to you, Luna, and I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna go in the Nightblade. It could go in a Sork, but just want to be able to get back stamina with hitting a button and whatever. What I left with after having done that is like, honestly, I could do that. It doesn't matter. Like I could do it on a Crow probably. I honestly don't think that
Yeah.
even though the Nightblade gets back more recoveries while blocking and has a skill you can hit that'll give you back recoveries, my main takeaway is like, nah, I could have just heavy attacked if I needed stam like that. I mean, maybe there would be a situation where it would be the difference between dying and not dying, but I honestly think that as you get better, so when you're trying to like don't make your build for the top tier, because by the time you get to the top tier, none of this stuff may matter for you.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
Most of them don't matter.
yeah, so just build for the stuff that'll make it easy on you early on, and then kind of do whatever else. We got a lot of comments here. Let me see if I can catch up real quick. No one says, on topic of Zoss not knowing their own game, anyone found the niche for Lamp Knight's art? crunched numbers and even had AI go over all possible numbers, and even AI said the math don't math in the current meta of the game. I'm not super familiar with that one, no one, but that does not surprise me at all. Robert says sturdy for everything. Um, what else we got here? Chicken says I used to heal dungeons lots. I had to hold boss because tank couldn't live. Yeah, that happens. Um, uh, Refinator. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. I'm the past. We used to use infused in all the parts. Yeah, yeah. Using infused, like things have changed since then, Raf. But it probably wasn't that great of an idea at that point, to be totally honest with you. Lenny says Defiance on tank is a waste unless parsing with a thief. The mag recovery is so redundant. That's kind of to your point. And then Raph says again, but today I'm using reinforced for body parts and divines, or sturdy for small parts like gloves, shoulders, and belts. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's another thing too. It's really weird that certain pieces will scale depending on how quote unquote large they are with things, and then certain abilities won't, and so it just makes it kind of awkward. I think they should have normalized that. Robert Miller says Nord DK gets such a big bonus towards resistance cap. I mean, you want to talk about a big bonus? I mean, the Arcanist gets like 4,000. So Arcanist is even crazier, but yeah, yeah, DK does already get that bonus. Lenny says I usually send 6 reinforced plus 1 Nern on their belt. So that's another way. Running Nern can help you with your resistances, guys, on their smaller pieces, and it'll give
That's
more than
true.
having reinforced. On my non-Nords, okay, and then flex sturdy or well fitted in for specific fights and situations. There you go. And Lenny is an incredibly sweaty tank who knows what he's talking about. For those who don't know, and raid lead, he's also just a very knowledgeable person. Robert says,
A lot of knowledgeable people, not a lot of knowledgeable people in the chat right now.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
surprised.
Yeah. Dodge requires the tank to really know the fight well so you can time the dodge better. Yeah, yep. Spark Rip says yes. I think run. I think is the type. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yes, I well fit on Basai OT. Okay, so they're agreeing with you on that. Generally, I use full sturdy. After I realize sturdy gets stronger with every additional piece. Since I get to full resist on my build, I never bothered with reinforced. Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's interesting what he said because I heard many times that the more you put like on sturdy, the less effect it gives, and it's the opposite. So it's always good to have some misconceptions debunked here.
Okay. And yes, I never bothered with reinforced, even without a Nord. So Spark is already getting to resistance cap even without a Nord, even without running
Yeah.
reinforced. Why is that? Can you explain that briefly, or is it more of an in depth thing for the sturdy armor, Lena?
Some stuff scales on a way that the more that you have like from the source, the less benefit you get. Some stuff work in the opposite way. Sturdy, what he said is like the more sturdy you get, the bigger the bonus. So
Okay.
just makes sense to run a lot of sturdy. And I remember people saying like the opposite: the more sturdy you get, the less relevant it is, and it's not true.
Okay.
So
Cool.
it's important to understand those mathematics, those math stuff about some specifics on the game.
Okay. Cool. And then King James says, I thought I was getting decent at tanking. Then listening here, I have a lot to learn. Hey, King James, man, you don't need to know all this stuff to be good at tanking, though.
Yeah.
But we're just nerds like that, man. So yeah, yeah, don't stress it. Um, and then Spark 7 Heavy versus everyone running 511. 7 Heavy is 2.5k physical more than 511 and
Yeah.
1.5k more plus CP slottables. Yeah, I also run 7 Heavy. I don't see a
Yeah.
compelling reason to run non-heavy armor at this point. Not that you couldn't, and not there's not ways or reasons to, but I don't. In the average situation, I don't find it particularly compelling. And then
If you need the armor, it's more relevant than the 2% resources.
yeah, yeah, exactly. If and then Lenny saying, yeah, I also run 7 Heavy. I just switched to 7 Heavy when they changed the CP the passives from the not CP but the passives from a while ago. Robert says a sturdy setup on a Sork tank would be interesting. They have that huge block mitigation buff. Yeah, I mean anything on a Sork tank, they're pretty survivable
Yeah, yeah.
for sure. Uh,
Orc's pretty nice, pretty decent, pretty packed for tanking. I
Yeah.
like a lot.
And I think it's really interesting because they don't really have any wasted skills. Like there is either like a skill where you're like this is perfect for this build, a tanking build, or it's just not. Whereas on some other classes you're like, let me use the skill that probably wasn't meant for tanking, but it probably does this thing the best. You don't have that on Sork. It's just like everything you want is like it's there. It's absolutely locked in. Uh,
And it's in the best state it ever was in the game,
yeah.
Sork right now. Like just recently they finished it like debugging a bunch of stuff. Because before when you did the streak with the ball morph that reflects a projectile, it would count as a pet. And it would change your HP and mag and stan because of the passive.
Oh my
Like even the
gosh.
streak thing. So it was crazy. Like the Atronac also counted as a pet. So everything right now just works so well on Sark. And it was like constantly changing. When I started the game, they were starting to change the Sark. They were starting like to give more options when you don't have a pet. And Sork right now it's on its best, honestly. So super nice for anyone that likes Sork and wants to start tanking. I super advise it.
Yeah, yeah, Sorks are great. I will say, like, so just to kind of run through all of the tanking class, maybe we can both do this, Luna. I'm gonna say one, like I'm gonna pick one thing, and I think it's gonna be whatever
Okay.
comes to my mind first. It might not actually be the best thing because I've done this and I've like said something crazy, but I want to just say that the thing that makes it the most fun or that I like the reason I like this class, what makes me, because I genuinely, and I think Luna's in the same boat, I genuinely enjoy tanking on and playing all of the classes, no matter what role it
Yeah.
is. Like I genuinely enjoy it. So I'll just run through here, and I'm gonna like have to make sure I get all these. So Sork, I mean, having Streak is just incredibly fun. It's like the best teleport I think out there, and so while you can get other teleports, it's the most instant, feels the best. That's why I like Sork. Um,
Yeah.
on the oh man, what do I want to pick next? Oh man. Okay, so Nightblade. I should just like flow of consciousness, just keep rolling with it. Nightblade. Why do I like the Nightblade? The Dark Cloak. Dark Cloak just does so much. It gives you this massive heal, and it gives you this massive heal that also gives you your major resolve, that also gives you minor protection, and it's on your front bar, and so it makes it where a one bar Nightblade is the easiest and best tanking build out there. Period. That's an opinion, but I'm right. No, I don't know. I could be wrong, but I absolutely feel that way on the Nightblade, and I just think it's in such a great place that it's like, yeah, I just love it. That one skill, it's different than every other tanking class, and absolutely love it. On the Templar, Templars now have a class taunt, so they're only the second class that has a class taunt that I'm aware of that, or that I can think of at least, that will you charge across the room. It doesn't drop block, even though you would think it would. So it's essentially a teleport
That's
or a
crazy.
charge. As far as I can tell, I've tried to kill myself. It does not drop block. And when the add-ons still show you as blocking. So as far as I can tell, it also you hit and you taunt, it gives you major protection for 15 seconds. That means as long as you're keeping taunt on an opponent, you get major protection. That frees up a spot to put some other flexible skill there, and it's just friggin' fun to charge across the room and taunt things. And sometimes it's stupid, it does not at all make sense. I was doing it in that hard mode Dread Cell Reef twins group that was just like, kind of going in there and progging. And a couple of times I charged in front of the other tank and got hit by an AoE that one tapped me, but still incredibly fun. I absolutely love it. It was problematic at times, but I just loved it. It was so much fun. As your core taunt is also a gap closer, which is also provide you with major protection. I just think it's so cool. Okay. All right. I went hard on that one. Um, for Arcanist, I think generating Crux and then having a shield that will give you like a 14k heal if you've got 3 Crux is just ridiculous. And so I think it's a really cool play style. I struggle the most with an Arcanist. I know everybody else has had this figured out 9 months ago. I'm a slow learner. I don't know. But I absolutely love that on an Arcanist. I should be keeping track here. What else do we got? We did Nightblade, we did Sorcerer, Necro. The necro res, okay, being able to res three other people in a massive area. I have carried groups through content that they should not have been able to get through, and it's just so damn fun. It's so fun being if you can keep yourself alive on a necro tank, then you can carry a group through content because you can res them and you can res them and you can res them. I have had VKA groups. I don't know if they were hard mode or not hard mode, where I have just on second floor, I was the only person alive multiple times, and I dropped a necro res after the blood ball blew up and killed everybody or whatever, and just done that multiple times through multiple rounds, and it just feels so great. You just could be a hero. You know, it's the GoPro class. You get to be a hero. Oh man, what else? What else am I? DK. My favorite skill on a DK. I don't love the DK if I'm being totally honest. Um, my favorite skill. I mean, their hardened armor is a ridiculous shield, and it's so cheap
Yeah,
that you can just like spam it. I for the longest time still felt like newer tanks really needed to run igneous shields on their front bar for the stam recovery, and I don't think that's the case anymore since scribing has changed, and so I'm kind of the mind of like get rid of igneous shield and hardened arbor is the way to go. So I think that is probably yeah. No, I say that. What am I talking about? This is the problem on a DK. It's magma shell. What the hell am I talking about? It's got to be Magma Shell. Magma Shell makes you unkillable for 12 seconds, and lets you completely ignore mechanics, and is the only
I hate
class.
it.
Yeah, well, it's the only class in the game where you can do certain crazy sweaty strats, which I like. I also see people using it when they don't need to, and so they just don't learn a fight. And I'm talking about hard modes, guys. I'm talking about hard mode groups where you have a tank that's like magma shelling all the time, and it's like you could just not and still be fine, but you know it's what's needed, and it's great for new players too, right? Like you hit that and you're gonna be just fine. um Daedric says I'm kind of Cairu hates the best class. Shake my head. Yeah. What else did I miss? There's got to be
Warden,
Warden.
Warden. I
Oh
think it's
man, oh
Warden the
my
best one.
gosh. A Warden, their heal, Polar Winds. Oh my god, it's the biggest, hugest heal. You hit that once
Yeah,
and it heals somebody else. You can help heal people out of tombs. You can keep people alive in group content. Um,
crazy.
yeah, and the heal over time portion is also massive. It's like I can't remember, but it's like I want to say over 3K a second. It's a lot. It's a ton. Not to mention the burst heal is just massive. So like if there's heal checks or things that like you need a big heal, like Warden is like S tier. You can't go wrong there. And not to mention all their unique buffs. But yeah, is that it? Did I cover everybody? I think so.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you did. Just pointing, warding is great for heal checks as a tank, but as a healer, it's usually one of the worst. That's curious.
Yeah.
But just to put my points on each class about that, I'll make it quick. Warden is definitely the one of the greatest, because if you like that concept of healing and tanking at the same time, this is the only class that will give you that like so well done.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect class for foreman content when you are not playing with a healer
Yeah.
and you have like the extra healings from Warden. And this for me is super fun, and I learned a lot about the game playing Foreman content. And just leaving my takes super quick here. A lot of Foreman content is much harder than Trials. So if you're familiar with Foreman content, you shouldn't be fearing Trials. And Sork is super fun, as you said, because of the streak. Streak is super fun, super survivable. The class is like packed. And the lightning things, I really love it. It gives the mage feeling, the mage vibe. Arcanist has this same mage vibe, a little more OP on some aspects, because you have like infinite resources regeneration. You get like over 2k stem and mag regen, which is too crazy to be honest. But it looks so good. All the skills look so good, so snappy, so great to use. I love when a class like just feels right to play with, and I feel the same about Nightblade. Like the Nightblade animations, the skills that you use,
Yeah.
everything when you play with the class, it's so it feels so good. Like it's
It's
so aesthetic, good
thematically
and well
appropriate.
done.
Yeah, it's thematically appropriate
Yeah,
for that
yeah,
class.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's one of the best. Like especially if we consider like the oldest classes, I think Nightblade is by far the best on this regard, and super easy, super newbie friendly to play. Like you said, like you have insane builds and it's probably the most resourceful tank class in the game. So
Yeah.
that's that. And DK, I don't like DKs. I'm with you, but I like Stagger. So they have Stagger. What can I say? They have Stagger. Stagger is fun.
Yeah,
And also Ignos weapons. I don't know. It's not like that I like it, but the fact that you have it is still
pretty
pretty strong.
huge. Yeah.
I think Ignos weapons is a big thing. If you have to point out like two big things on DK, I wouldn't point out Magma Shell, even though it's kind of game breaking. I would point Sager and Igneous weapons
Okay.
because those are usually the two ones that are always in my bar and the reason that I'm playing DK at first place. And then we have Templar. I know nothing about Templar. Sorry, guys. Templar. I mean, I know about the class and all the skills, but I never played it. To be honest, it's
Okay.
the class that I didn't got into, like even on DPS or healer, or it's the DPS that I did like the less amount of parses. Is the tank that I never played. Is the healer that I never played. So
Okay.
I don't feel like I don't like the thematic. But I think that's it. Necro.
Yeah.
Necro, I feel like it has the snappiness of some animations and mechanics, like the scythe. It feels so good to press it. The boneyard feels so good to put it to. I feel like it's super well done. Like, and I feel like it's nice that they are worrying about more about those stuff, like those combat animations and sound effects and those things, because it makes you feel it makes you enjoy playing the class. And I think this is the first thing that we have to cover when we talk to people, because the first thing that makes someone play the class is how fun they feel, how well they feel playing with the class. That's why I started playing like a tank arcanist, and that's why you play that much Nightblade probably,
Yeah.
is because of how you feel playing with the class.
Yeah.
So I think this is like the most important thing. I'm really happy that they are taking a look on that on the later notes, and that's just cool. I would like to just tell some stuff about tanking for new players.
Yeah.
Uh, a subject that I would like to bring here. And talking a little bit about my history about tanking, just to relate to them like on personal experience. So just to try to put it together, when I started playing tanking, I did all like the super researching of Night Hero content and things on internet and hyperoxys and a lot of stuff. And sometimes I got into content that was not that informative, unfortunately. But when you start playing, one thing that I would like to say, usually people think playing tank is like is too difficult because like you maybe die too easily. It's maybe too hard. And I wanted to say that it's not. Usually, it's much easier to die as a DPS. When you're playing a tank and you're not playing like a super sweaty content, not a hard mode thing, and you do like all the checklists with all the resistances, all the buffs that you need to be resourceful and resistant, it's actually much easier because you don't die easily for stuff. Like it takes a lot. Usually, light attacks from bosses don't kill you. They don't do much. It's mostly the heavies that you have to pay attention. So don't feel intimidated to play the class. It's much easier to die as a DD or a healer than die as a tank. But as a tank, you carry a lot of responsibility, and I get that. I was also a victim of being afraid of feeling guilt in a group, and that's what kept me from playing tank for a bit. But don't get over your head. Basically, is what I would like to say. And the more you play the class, all those checklists that you made that you need, the more you play, the more you realize that you don't need all that stuff. So maybe like when you're just starting, you have to think about all of that, build all your character, make everything so you feel like the most safe as possible, because it will be the best thing for your mind. Because if you do everything right, you will be playing more confident. Because I think it was more about confidence than anything. Because like feeling that I was like fully preparated, fully like built to be playing the role made me feel more confident about myself. And so do everything that you can for you to be like fully on point with your build, with resources, with resistance and everything. And the more you play, the more you will be able to drop those things and play more with the class. Because what I think it's fun, Night, is like when you get to a certain level, that you can like just drop those things, put different things on your build, play with your build around, like and this is something like kind of uh, this is maybe maybe a hard take, maybe a hot take for me to say, but you don't need a bunch of stuff. Like you don't need minor protection, you don't need major protection, you don't need armor cap, you don't need a bunch of stuff. Maybe oh, you don't have minor resolve source in your build, so you need to put green vigor. No, not necessarily. Sometimes using a green vigor, it will drain your stamina. Maybe it will hurt you during the game, like during
Hmm.
the fight. So at some point, you kind of realize that there's a lot that you don't need, and that's why people are doing like parsing with tanking. And and of course, this is not for everything. But when you're playing like vet content, everything is pretty decent to tank, pretty easy, pretty decently easy to tank. So don't feel discouraged to play, because usually stuff are not that hard, are not that crazy the way we think. And the only really hard stuff would be like actual hard modes and from the later contents, like Dread Sales Reef. Oh, if I'm playing Dread Sales Reef, I'm worrying about my resistance cap. Yeah,
Okay.
I am, because I know a lot of times I will be under pressure on the fight. If you're doing like Sanity's Edge, like the first fight, the first boss, oh, I'm gonna pay attention a lot on my resistances. Maybe I'll probably slot a flare. If I'm doing Lucent Citadel. Oh, I play as off tank. I will play like later today as off tank, as a Sork there, and I have to worry about everything. I slot flare, I slot everything. I'm fully like tank and resourceable there, because like you need it. But the fights that you actually need it, they are uh, so few. Like it's not you cannot compare with the rest of the game. And most of the veteran content, which is probably what people are aiming, it's much easier than that.
That's it.
And so that's basically it. So don't feel intimidated, because if you get all your resistance, you like way above being able to tank that. Like way above. The game is not made for you to tank like with 33 armor cap all the times. The game, like you can probably tank most of stuff with 26k and be doing just fine. So if you do everything right, just feel the confidence that like you're way above everything that you need.
Yeah, that's really interesting because kind of what you're saying, and I think this is largely true. Is that when you're on a DPS could come in white gear with like decent like traits, but like not even you could be missing your 5 piece bonus, and if you know how to press buttons correctly, like you can do a pretty good amount of damage. And I feel like on a tank where it's like your build itself is a little bit more important, and if you get that locked in, what you actually have to do in the fight is a lot less. Like if you can just stay alive, you could just hold block, hold taunt, and stay alive, then you're gonna be okay. And then
Yeah,
eventually, that's why you can solo tank stuff. That's why you can DPS tank stuff, and what have you, because that is the case. Although I do want to say, if you are a new tank, please, 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 for your own sanity, not anybody else's, look up a build and use one that's gonna
yeah,
set you on the right path. Don't because you're gonna have a more enjoyable experience, I guess, which I think you agree with.
yeah, totally. You have to make it easier for you, because in tanking you have to learn mechanics while tanking, and
Yeah,
learning mechanics while tanking maybe it's not that easy, and maybe that's why people like get scared a bit
yeah,
about tanking.
yeah.
So be the most thankful that you can be will
I
be
I really
pretty
like
good.
that message of like just get out there, you can do it. That's absolutely a great way to kind of wrap this up. Um, I do want to just catch up on a couple of comments because people were chiming me in about their favorite things about various tank classes before we go, though, if you don't mind. So, a Smart Group
Yeah,
is
yeah, sure.
saying Sork is the Swiss Army knife of tanks. Yeah, absolutely. And then Robert Miller saying when you sort tanks, run open world. If you ever do you run Stam DPS build? Oh, that's an interesting idea. I'm not sure what people do overland, man, because I don't really do that. Raf says it's funny for game design that Sork tanks are viable, but a DK healer isn't. DK healer is just fine, man. I'm actually we'll talk about that more in a second. But yeah, people are not about the DK healer. Robert Miller says Dark Cloak is why I don't like the Blade tank. Such a short CD. Yeah, it's a short cooldown, but you just always keep it up, man. It's just part of your rotation, and it works really well. But yeah, that's fair. Um, and you can let the hot roll off as long as you keep up everything else. Ralph says Raf, I'm sorry, says I really like to tank on this game too, but it's so many viable sets to farm. Bring a barrier for someone who wants to get back and start in this role. Yeah, well, there's basically
That's true.
four tanks sets, plus monster sets that are always kind of meta, and you can kind of just roll with those. To be totally honest with you, uh, Raf. But yeah, I do feel you that like if you get into the sweatier stuff, there's the gear sets can get a little crazy. Yeah. Spark says, Knight, you should try Plar Tank with CAG, 2.4 second reses, go hard. Pair that with Shield Wall ulti, it's like Nekarez, but you can do it all the time. Spark, it's funny, man. I actually was going to maybe make a fun build with the Templar for the means with all of that, but also running the banner. And it's actually who was showing me this the other day. It was Lenny that was showing it to me the other day. So I'm gonna steal Lenny's build. I'm gonna put it up, but you can get it to like 1.8 seconds on your reses with the banner, which is just insane. I think it was 1.8. It might have been less. So yeah, man, I'm with you. That's cool. Yeah, and it does. You can res so fast that even as a tank, you can res pretty consistently. Daedric's comment about how I hate the best class. Robert Miller, Magma Shell's OP. Elfbane, DK, just spamming Magma Shell. Yeah, I feel that. King James says Magma Shell on front bar with Nazare Monster. Hit it once on my debuffs hit. 500 ulti is a cheat code for the team. Yeah, that can work really well. Uh, Arc Scry in the corner, Spark says. How hard is stagger tanking in your opinion? I'll leave that to Luna. Luna, you want to answer that? How hard is stagger tanking?
It depends on the fight. It can be either like easy if the fight is easy, but it's like it's in the proportion of the fight. The hardest the fight, the hardest it will be to be doing stagger. To the point that sometimes it can be like insanely hard. Like if you're doing like Zalvaka on Rock Grove, that she has like a super long channel heavy attack, and you have to
Yeah.
deal with that
Gosh.
while keeping stagger. That's insanely hard, probably too hard, and probably you shouldn't be doing that at the first place. Put your group in danger like that. But if it's a more easy fight, it's easier, but it's still hard because on easy fights you don't get to learn some stuff like because they are so easy. You're just like pressing block and whatever. But when you put stagger, you have to actually learn when you exactly can drop the block. And still, it can kill you in any fight because even like the dumbest heavy attack, you can sometimes like guessing your stagger on the wrong time
Yep.
with the casted one, and you die. So it's always a bit dangerous. But if you start in easier fights, won't be that hard.
W-
It will be okay, especially if you're familiar with the fight. But
Yeah.
never do it on fights that you don't know about. I never start a content with stagger in my bar if I don't know that content.
Hmm.
You put only after you understand the mechanics and the boss patterns. Then you start putting, and it will be like a relearning for yourself.
Asylum Sanctorum might be one of the best places to try that
Oh,
to
true.
learn too, because if you're main tanking Vass, after a while you're bored out of your mind. Because if you're with a new group, if everybody's at the same level and you go in there, the DPS have so much harder of a job than you do. You're going to be bored with your job long before they've picked up what they need to do. So that can be a great place. Lyriel says, it's been really fun hearing Luna's perspective. I'm glad she puts up with your antics and was willing to chat today. Me too, Lyriel. Absolutely. Uh, Luna, thanks for putting up with my antics. Spark says, uh, resistances on SE first boss don't actually matter since it's an Oblivion percentage base bleed. I did not know that, Spark.
Yeah, the
That's
blade.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good info.
Yeah, what I meant of building more tank on that fight is like putting more heals, putting more shield, and putting the percentage reductions. Not necessarily. defense. But yeah, yeah.
Okay. Cool, cool. Hadrian Ramos says, "Thank you for bringing Luna to talk about tanking Night Horror." Hey, I'm glad, always glad to have Luna talking about anything. I am the biggest Luna tanking fan. She is great. Yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear. Chicken says, "Fine, I will start taking vet dungeons." Hey, we got one convert.
Let's go. Yeah.
Spark says that was my first DSR hard mode clear build. Okay. Uh, that's I'm not. It's been. I'm sorry, Spark. I'm so after the fact. I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing there. I apologize. Nani says
We lost the
Nightblade tank.
timing.
What's that?
We lost the timing, so we
Yeah,
cannot
yeah,
cannot
yeah.
know.
Yeah, sorry about that. Nani says Nightblade tank is the only tank. 100% Nani. For those who don't know, and we kind of documented it through some live streams, but Nani started tanking on my 1 bar Nightblade tanking build, and then after a little bit, she moved to the 2 bar build, and has been loving it. She plays with one hand and just has a whole bunch of buttons on her mouse. So, and that's worked out really well for her as far as like starting with something that's a little bit easier, and then she's been just fine moving into something more difficult. Spark says I got into an argument with one of the people in my group, and that was my being annoyed. Okay. Uh, 90 stress relief, specifically a 1 bar Nightblade tank. Okay, awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Given the love. Luna living on the edge. Hey, Emmett, it's good to see you, man. Robert says Redgar tank is in the works. Still not sure on the class yet. Hey, that works, man. Robert, I mean, Nightblade's great, dude. You want to be a hero, go with a Necro, but it's a lot harder with most things, honestly, to play. It's like one of the harder. It's like the highest risk, high reward. But man, I think we got through the comments there, guys. It's so cool hearing what
Yeah.
other people like about like the various classes and like, oh, I love this or I like the flavor of this. It's cool. Um,
Yeah,
finally
yeah,
delivering on the
and it's super cool. It's super cool that the game got to a point that we can like embrace all the classes for the role of
yes,
tanking.
yes,
Scribing with the recent changes, like everything combined, because they are working really hard on making the other classes viable. Like they did a lot of for Templar on the last patches. They did a lot for Sork. They did a lot for many classes. Even Warden got some buffs recently. So
yeah,
everything right now feels really nice to tank.
yeah, it
It's
does.
awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. They finally got to the point where you really can play what you want right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Scribing was perfect for that.
Spark says select all messages on YouTube chat. I missed something. Something didn't come in or something. Spark, I've got them all showing, man. At least, unless sometimes YouTube thinks it needs to. Yeah, no, it should be. Let me check. I thought it should be showing all. Let me double check. Not just top messages. Sometimes YouTube though um, decides to not show messages. Let me let me see. Hold on. I'm apparently because I should be able to see. Oh, I hold on. No, you're right. You're right. You're right. I feel so. All messages. Here we go. How long has that been like that? uh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for explaining to me how YouTube works. Um,
Yeah, I
uh,
remember this was like an old issue from YouTube that you have to click on that to allow everything, which is crazy. That they don't tell you that you have a filter.
yeah, I feel like such a dork. I wonder if that saves in the setting or if I need to do that every single time now. And I've been missing messages from people. Huh.
Yeah, no idea. We gotta do a second stream
Yeah,
to
yeah.
figure
Well,
out.
all right. That'll we'll figure that out. Sorry about that, Spark. And thanks for the help, man. Cool. Well, Luna, thanks for coming on. I appreciate the time here, guys. For the plan for the rest of the week, unfortunately, well, maybe, I would love to have Luna back on. Probably not this week, but yeah, maybe we can do that some other time if everybody's digging these kind of chats. I know Sparkus came on, and yeah, for those who don't know, has chatted a lot. That was really really helpful and everything else. I think for Spark has done a bunch of research, but I like talking with various people, just getting to meet everybody and see the various styles of in game. A couple of things we got planned for this week, and I don't know exactly when. Um, uh, Nani's asking if we can follow you anywhere, Luna. Or
Oh,
are you making
I'm
content?
not that like internet
Okay, okay.
public person, but you can like follow me on YouTube. on my channel. Maybe I dropped something. I have no idea. But anyway, and you
Okay.
can reach me on Discord. Just find me. My name is pretty much the way my name shows on YouTube. It's the same. You can find me on Discord, Luna Cairu. Everything together. If you want to ask anything to me or talk to me, just reach me up on Discord.
Yeah, and if you click her name here in the chats, then you should be able to find her channel that way as well with
Yeah.
the one parse video that she's got up right now. It sounds like. Cool. Yeah, later on in the week, guys, just to go over this, we are going to one is we got to do a DK. So for all the channel members that are people that are donating, it starts like $1 a month, but any channel member, any level, there was a while ago I put out and I was like, hey, if you request a build, I will make it. And so what we got to do is we already did a Brittleton video I think last week, but we've got to do a DK healer video for Were Moogle. So that's on the docket for this week. And then the other major video that's a little bit more like this, where we're kind of chatting about things, is I want to do a video and talk about the current state of ESO. And I want to kind of like a news and a bit of an objective take. Obviously, the company, corporation puts out their thoughts every year. I think that's corporate nonsense 99% of the time. So, that is what it is. It's not super helpful. And then I think there's also a lot of negativity and well earned, most of it, towards Zoss at being frustrated with various things. And I just want to talk about it from like a less emotional and more objective point of view, and just say, hey, here's the things, good and bad. Probably that means I'm going to piss off everybody, but I just want to talk about it. I think we'll probably plan that for Friday. Is probably when we'll do it. So but I think that we've exhausted this topic for today, guys. So I think we're going to call it here. Luna, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure and it was a lot of fun chatting with you. And thanks for being in the guild, just for being part of the guild and for passing on your knowledge, not only to in that was in the boss, but just for like the community in general. It's really helpful. And I know there's a bunch of other people. Sparkrip does this. Most people in that was Nani does this. There's a bunch of people that do this sort of thing. Lenny, of course, and I just want to say thank you specifically to you, but also to everybody else for sharing you guys' knowledge and helping people learn more about the game and have more enjoyment, because that's what it's really all about, is having fun.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you guys, honestly, because you kind of got me started in the game. I feel like that wasn't the boss was a big piece of that. So that's why
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't pretend living, even if I'm not playing the game. So thank you guys. Thank you, Knight, for receiving me today, for having this opportunity of chatting with you. That's really fun. Thanks everybody that got into the chat, my friends and people from Brazil that were watching this stream. Some of them don't even understand English, but I know they're there.
Okay,
So thank you anyway.
that's
And
awesome.
that's it.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you guys again. Sniper Wolf says healers are fun. I'm trying to find a good healer build for my warden. Hey, man, I got a really popular video up. It probably needs some updating, but it should get you in a good spot, man, for the warden healer. Sniper should be able to find it there. All right, guys. Well, have a good night. I will, whenever I know we're doing those new streams, those other streams that I'm talking about, I will put them up in YouTube so you can see them there. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks everybody for tuning in, for hanging out, for asking questions, and for chatting. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Thanks everybody for joining. Bye.